Okay, this video is about adding and subtracting signed numbers. I hope it makes sense as we go. If you think about the number line, the origin is where you start, and the positive direction going to the right, the negative direction going to the left. In order to add two numbers, they're separated by plus and minus signs, sometimes more than one, and that gets to be the confusing part. In order to get this going, I thought we'd start with thinking about the positive 3 as something that takes you from the origin and takes you to the right 3 units. So if that is positive 3, the opposite of that, the opposite of 3 is negative 3, and that actually slides you from the right to the left and goes just the opposite direction. Same length, just opposite direction. So if you think about the negative sign, it just means go the opposite direction. Positive in general goes to the right, negative signs take you to the left. So if you think about the opposite of negative 3, the opposite of negative 3, you'd start out going in the negative direction, but then you go in the opposite of that, which would then take you back in the positive direction, which is basically the same as adding 3. So adding 3, when you flip it, is negative 3 going to the left, and the opposite of negative 3 takes you back in the right direction. So think about a negative sign as a flip. It moves you in the opposite direction of where you were going. So in this case, 5 plus 3, if you were to think about that, you would start at the origin, you'd go 5 units to the right, and you'd end up at 5. And then you would add 3, so you would go 3 more units in the positive direction, and you'd end up at 8. 5 plus 3 is 8. If you think about 5 plus negative 3, you'd start out at the origin, you'd go 5 units to the right, that's 5, a positive 5 if you wanted to put a sign there, and then we're going to add the opposite of 3. Well, the opposite of 3 is this arrow that goes to the left. So we'd start thinking about going in that direction, but we add the opposite, which means we go in the opposite direction, 3 units. And that takes us back. So that is a lot like thinking about 5 minus 3, which is the same thing as 2. So this next one, 5 minus 3, we actually just did. 5 minus 3 is 2, which is the same thing. These folks are the same. 5 plus negative is the same thing as 5 minus. For this one, the 5 takes us 5 units to the right. Normally I'd make that maybe black. The negative says we're going to start thinking about subtracting, but when we subtract the opposite of 3, we look that way but go the opposite direction. It's this one, the opposite of subtraction. It's actually, we're adding, so we're going to go 3 units to the right. So that's really the same as 5 plus 3, which is 8. So we did the opposite of subtracting. We added, and we got to 8. These problems are very much the same, except in this case, this one starts with going negative 5. So we're going to go negative 5, which means start at the origin and go 5 units to the left. And then we're going to add 3. That's just moving to the right, 3 units. So where we were here at negative 5, we add 3. If this is 0, and we went 5 to the left and 3 back, we end up at negative 2. For this one, start at the origin, go 5, I like negatives being red. We start at the origin and we go left 5, and then we continue another negative 3. So we're adding another negative arrow, and it goes 3 units more to the left. So this one ends up at negative 8. Negative 5 minus 3, 5 units to the left, and we subtract, meaning we're going to go to the left 3 units. So that is also negative 8. notice that negative 5 plus a negative 3 is just the same as negative 5 minus 3. Adding a negative is the same thing as subtracting. Those signs are equivalent. For this one, negative 5 takes us to the left 5. Subtracting the opposite of 3, we start thinking we're going negative, but we're doing the opposite of that. We're actually going to add. It's this one here. The opposite of negative 3 means we're actually adding 3. So it's the same as negative 5 plus 3, which is negative 2. 0 is here. Went all the way to negative 5, and we came back 3. We're still in negative ground at negative 2. So with that in mind, I have a few other problems to do. And see how quickly we can do this. This will be with the arrows. If you think about negative 5, we're going to go 5 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're going to add 8, which means we're going to go to the right 8 units. That's the 5 plus 3 more. And then we're going to add a negative arrow. We're going to go back 3. So this was 0. We went to negative 5. We went forward 8 and back 3. We ended up back at 0. This is equal to 0. You could write this as negative 5 plus 8 plus a negative is the same thing as subtracting, which equals 0. And then if you want, you can reorder. Addition or subtraction is commutative. Addition is commutative. So we could say this is 8 minus 5 minus 3. Notice that you're going 8 to the right and 5 and another 3 to the left. You go just as far to the left as you go to the right. It equals 0. In this case, we're going to go 8 units to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Starting at the origin, going 8 units to the right. Then we're going to go the opposite of subtraction. When you were to add another 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if this was 8, a positive, and this was a positive 4, we're now at 12. We're going to add the opposite. We're going to add an arrow going left, 5. So that would be negative. We started at 12, and we're going to go back to 4 and another 1. That will leave us at 7. That's really a negative 5 that we just added. Then we're going to add another negative 3. 1, 2, 3. And we end up at this point. Well, we have 12 minus 8, so this must be 4 equals 4. If we want to write this expression with fewer symbols, it's 8. The opposite of subtracting, the opposite of a negative is an addition of 4. Adding the opposite is subtracting 5, and subtracting 3. And here you can see, one way to think about this is to think negative 5 and negative 3 are negative 8. So 8 minus another 8 equals 4. It's another way of getting to the same place. I'm going to finish out with a couple problems where we're not going to draw the arrows. We're just going to do some work with the signs. So in this case, we're going to start off with this expression. We're just going to write everything with as few signs as possible. We started with negative 8. Adding a negative is subtracting. The opposite of a negative is adding, and adding 11. Now, one way to do this is to add up everything that's positive. If you think about 8 and 4 moving us to the left, and the 10 and the 11 are moving us to the right. So what moves us first to the right? These two, and that's 21 that moved us to the right, and these two moved us to the left, so that's 12, and 21 minus 12 would be 9. For this one, we're going to write it with as few signs as possible. So it's 6. The opposite of subtraction is adding. 8, adding 7, and adding a negative is subtracting 4. In this case, these numbers move us to the right, and we can add up how much do we move to the right. Well, that's 14 and 7 is 21, and we move to the left 4, so the grand total, 21 minus 4, is 17. Hope this helps with adding signed numbers, and good luck.